Video, I'm going to be showing you how to make a simple agent to do tasks using the Creekside brain. So in this example, we're going to be creating a email agent that is going to go into my Gmail inbox. It's going to find any emails with the Peterson label on it. So essentially I have my email broken down into things that I'm handling, things that I'm waiting for responses are on, things that I'm waiting for my VA to handle, all that sort of stuff. And so things that get moved into the Peterson inbox are things that I need to respond to. So this agent is going to help me draft responses to that based on the data that it has from all of our platforms about whoever I am talking to. So I typically use voice to text to make it super easy to give it a bunch of detail. One thing to note is that you're going to be in auto mode or bypass permissions mode. It's going to make it be able to process things significantly more easily for you. And then changing this to Opus 1 million and then extra high is typically where I like to be in order for it to give me the best possible output. A couple things to note in this prompt is that I like to give it as much detail as possible, so telling it that I want it to speak exactly the way I speak. Ask me any questions that you might have about what I'm trying to build here, so that way I can answer the questions that it has, and then it can, instead of just guessing what I want, have a better understanding of what I am trying to build. So if you ever are stuck on something that you're wanting to build and you just really don't know where to start, you can just tell it the basic idea of what you have and tell it to ask you questions about what you're looking to accomplish to be able to better formulate the idea. One thing to note is I've already built an agent like this. I'm just showing you how to build it super simply and how little steps it takes to actually get something that actually works. So if it does mention that, hey, we've built something like this before, if you have a different use case that you're wanting to use it for, you can just tell the agent, hey, that's awesome, tell me what it does, and then you can tell the agent to pull information from that agent to build your new agent. So just going to talk to it and tell it what to do. I want to build a completely new agent. It will fall into the label for Peterson. It should skip threads that already have a draft. It should only respond to emails that don't have a reply, and it should respond to everything in that label. We do want to use full context. This will be an on-demand agent. The Gmail draft should be attached to each thread in the Gmail inbox. If an agent has low confidence or missing confidence, it needs to input that at the top of the draft. There should already be a response style guide in the database for it to follow. We are going to hit all of the RAG sources. Just to clarify, RAG is essentially just the database. That's just another word for it, for the Creekside brain. Pull all of the RAG sources. And you should only draft this, never send for me. You should also look up the primary recipient or sender, but you can factor in the people that are CC'd. However, they aren't nearly as important. So while this is building, I'm going to talk through some other details when it comes to building out agents like this. For example, we have an agent builder agent, which essentially helps you build out these agents properly. Additionally, when you want it to perform an action on your behalf, there are typically two ways that it can go about performing an action. It can either do it through a MCP, which an MCP is just a API connection to any type of platform. That's going to fall under your connectors. These are all MCPs that allow us to hook in directly with the data on these platforms. So, for example, if we want to draft an email on Gmail, it can essentially directly connect on the back end to Gmail to do that for us. One thing to keep in mind is that it can only be connected to one account at a time. So if you're doing this in the ads at creeksidemarketingpros.com Claude account, then you will only be able to access MCPs through the ads at CreeksideMarketingPros.com. You won't be able to access your own personal accounts. So if you wanted to go in and have it do something for you in your own personal ClickUp account, it would not be able to do that because it's not signed in for you. However, if you wanted it to draft emails and send stuff on your behalf in the ads at Creekside Marketing Pros, it would be able to do that. The other way that you can have it do things is called Claude in Chrome, which essentially allows it to go and use Chrome for you. So even if it doesn't have direct access to sign in to any of your accounts, it can go in and use Google Chrome on your behalf and sign into your own account and go and do actions that way. It's a little bit more, there's more steps involved. It's not as clean when it comes to, it essentially has to read the computer screen to figure out what to do, as opposed to it being perfectly programmed on the back end to know exactly what data to pull from ClickUp or what data to pull from Gmail with the MCP. However, it is pretty much foolproof. It can work on any platform, even if you don't have an MCP connection, or Claude doesn't even have the ability to have an MCP connection. It can go in, open Chrome for you, and then in this example, I will be showing you how to have it open Gmail for you and actively draft a message for you without you having to go in and do anything, and it can do that all in the background. It's just sometimes a little bit slower. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you, once it gets this agent built, I'll be showing you how to have it execute for you with an MCP, and I'll be showing you how to execute with a using the Claude in Chrome for it to control your computer. That way you have two different abilities to build out agents based on your requirements and the tools you have access to. Just to set some expectations, this took about 10 minutes for it to load, so don't expect instant results, especially if it's going to do it correctly. It's going to take some time to go through everything. Also, don't expect it to be correct the first time. It does take a couple of stress tests and quality control to make sure that it's working properly. So before I even check it the first time, I always say QC it, and if I'm building something that's actively doing something for me, I say and stress test it. That way it can go in and find the obvious errors that I would have found anyways without me wasting any time looking for them. And this is exactly why we do the QC. So this is all stuff that really doesn't mean a whole lot to me because I'm not a coder, and you probably aren't either, but it allows it to go in and find things that quite frankly aren't relevant to us because we're not doing anything on the back end, but they are relevant to us in terms of it affects the way it actually performs. So it goes in, finds the issues that it was having, and then same thing here is it will show other things that it didn't necessarily fix that may also be worth looking into or worth fixing before going live with this this agent. So one thing it did say is that the stress test was blocked. This is likely because it performed the stress test incorrectly and tried to perform it too correctly. It tried to use the actual agent that we created in the database, when in reality it can just run the agent in this chat itself. It's more complicated than that, but essentially if an agent is added to the database, you have to open a new chat in order to be able to utilize agents because it has to reload in new context in order to utilize them in the normal fashion that they are used. But quite frankly, you can just tell it the following. We don't need to use the agent directly from the database, just use the instructions in this chat to perform a stress test. And so essentially that just is telling it to use the agent without using the actual file that's being saved. But regardless, you don't even necessarily need to know that. It tells you right here to complete the stress test. You can just restart Claude Code and open a new chat to retest it. Once again, another reason why you run these stress tests. It's never going to work the first time. If it does, lucky you. So I typically just go with whatever it gives me in option A. In this case, that's not going to work for us specifically because the Gmail label that I'm using doesn't need to change, and we're building it through the MCP. So we are going to try to use option B. And just to explain, this is why it's going wrong. I have brackets in the label name, and so those are when it tries to code it and find it, it's running into those issues. You don't really need to know how all it's working, just following its recommendations is typically going to be enough to get you by when building any agent. And that's just part of the process, is you will run into errors like these. All right, so it finally did, or went through and tried to do the stress test. Turns out we do actually have to reset Claude code in order to test it out. So that's what we're going to do. So I got the name from the previous chat to tell me the name of the agent, so I'm just telling it to run that agent. So this is one thing that can be frustrating about using the MCP, is it doesn't reveal everything that you would like it to the AI. There are limitations that it can only act in certain ways that the MCP allows. So in Gmail's example, it doesn't allow you to use the send feature with the Gmail MCP. So if we wanted to create something that was going to send messages for us, we may actually just want to use the Claude in Chrome, because it can use our computer the exact same way we would. Like I mentioned, that can just sometimes be slower, but I will be getting into how to use the Claude in Chrome feature after we get the MCP agent fully tested and I show you the output that it gave me. So another issue that we ran into was that the sub-agents couldn't get access directly to the MCP. Once again, not something you need to worry about. You can just ask it to run the agent directly in the session, as opposed to trying to release a sub-agent to do it. It essentially bypasses the issues that you would face from doing that. Once again, why MCPs, they're quicker, but they can be a little bit more complicated. Hence why I wanted to spend the first little bit showing you how to try to set one up this way, and then if it doesn't work, we'll get into the Claude in Chrome. But as we can see here, it output the drafts that I wanted it to. The big thing is that you could technically have like Claude Cowork or something like that do something similar to this. However, what Claude Code does incredibly well is that it pulls data on every one of these contacts, and so it doesn't just give answers based on what's in the thread. It gives answers based on all the previous conversations that we've had with that patient, with that client, and it writes it exactly in the same way that I would typically write a response. And so that kind of goes without saying for every type of agent that you would build out. It will utilize data from the Creekside brain in order to make it significantly better and more effective than it would be just trying to use the data on its own inside the agent that you build. Next up, I'm going to show you how to try to build it using the Claude in Chrome. Essentially, we already have the build out here. The only change we're really going to make is just say, hey, we want to use Claude in Chrome as opposed to the MCP. And so here's the message that I put. Instead of using MCP, I would like you to use, it says Claude in Chrome. It should say use Claude in Chrome to go to my Gmail account and create the drafts that way. And just like that, it's that easy, where you will tell it to launch it. Here's what the Claude in Chrome will look like when it's active. It will typically create a tab group like this. You'll see it colored, and it will be navigating on your screen for you. Sometimes it can be a bit slow because it's using the user interface, so there's a lot of data for it to process, but as you can see, I'm not clicking anything. It is going in and drafting these responses for me. So like I mentioned, that's why some of this can be significantly more beneficial, because if you can do it on the computer, so can the AI. So we'll just kind of sit here and we'll watch it to see if it actually outputs the copy the way we want it to in the draft and saves it for us. So once again, not typing anything. And as you can see, it's putting it into the actual thread that we wanted it to respond to anyways, versus when we tried to do it through the MCP, it was a little bit more convoluted. We ran into more errors. So that is why using this side of things can be a little bit more straightforward, because essentially you just tell it exactly how you would do it and it can go in and replicate that, whereas the MCP is using the back end to access the data in a way that you wouldn't typically be accessing it. And you can do this for just about any site and any account. So just because you're using the Claude account for ads at Creekside Marketing, you can still have it go use like say the Peterson at Creekside Marketing Pros email for you, and you aren't as limited by where you have to sign it at. So we're going to wrap this video up there. Once it would finish going through all of the troubleshooting, there may be some additional things that it'll recommend that you do to improve it, but those aren't as necessary for just getting the basics of creating your first agent. I recommend that you go check out my shorter video on how to create scheduled agents. It really is as straightforward as, once this agent is done running and we see that it works, we just say, hey, schedule this to run once a day, or schedule this to run once an hour, or anything, any pattern like that, based on what works best for your workflow, and then it will go in and schedule it for you. But I have a whole video talking through that specific process, and you can do that for any type of agent that you build out. So I hope this video helps, and I will see you in the next one. I'm going to be making some more videos specifically on how to build out other types of agents for you to use in your daily workflows.